Welcome to another installment in our video training series. I'm Susan Rains, Professor of Conflict Management at KSU's School of Conflict Management, Peacebuilding, and Development. I'm also an experienced mediator working both inside and outside of the court system. As you prepare to watch this video, I want to draw your attention to a few issues. This mediation focuses on the issue of spousal support, which is also called alimony. Please note that mediators in my state can explain the various elements that a judge or jury can consider when determining spousal support. And yes, our state actually allows jury trials for this issue. Yet we can't provide legal advice. So what's the difference? Basically, we can explain how the process works, but we cannot apply it to their case. We can't tell them if something's a good deal or a bad deal or what the judge would do. There's no formula for spousal support in our state. This means that 5 different judges could hear the same case and issue 5 different decisions on alimony. This gives the parties a lot to argue about in mediation because no one really knows for sure what might happen in court. It's the mediator's task to see if the parties can reach an agreement about how much alimony and for how long. Let's go ahead and watch this mediation, then come back to debrief it together. Good morning. Thank you for being here today. My name is Susan Rains, and I'll be your mediator. I want to just briefly go over and remind you about the rules for mediation. The first rule is that I don't give legal or financial advice. So if you feel you need that, it's important to get that from somebody else before you sign any agreement today. Even though the judge ordered you to come to mediation, you're not required to reach an agreement. So if we discuss the issues in the case and you prefer to go ahead and put this issue before the judge, you have that right. But I encourage you to hear each other out, listen to proposals, and see what we might get done today. The benefit of mediation is that you can customize an agreement that might suit your case better than you might get before a judge and find a solution that you can both live with. Okay? Everything that you tell me is confidential, and that means I won't talk to the judge or anyone else about what happened in mediation. There are some exceptions to that. If there are allegations of child abuse or neglect or threats of harm to yourself or others that arise, I have the ability to report those to the appropriate authorities, not the judge. But hopefully those won't come up. The fees for mediation are $200 an hour. Those are split by the parties at the end of mediation today. We discussed that. I know you received that information in advance. I ask that you share all information fully and completely. So if you, for example, I always joke that if you're hiding a Swiss bank account and it doesn't come out at the time of the divorce, but somebody finds out about it later, then the case can be reopened. So any information you share should be full and accurate and complete to your knowledge, okay? By coming to mediation, you're affirming you're here free from the influence of drugs or alcohol or any untreated mental health condition that would make it hard for you to make good decisions for your case, okay? Do you have questions about mediation?
None at all.
Okay. All right, so what I'd like you to do is just read through this. I know you received a copy in advance. These are the rules for mediation that I've just gone over, and there's a spot for you to sign on the back. Plaintiff here and defendant just a little bit lower. You're welcome to read through that, but I know you did receive a copy in advance. Thank you. And I know I saw your names on the court paperwork. You're welcome to call me Susan, but I want to call you, address you however you're comfortable. What would you like to be, how would you like to be addressed?
You can call me Stephanie.
Okay, Stephanie.
And Richard is fine.
All right, Stephanie and Richard. Okay. So my understanding is there's already been a partial agreement filed with the court, and the remaining issue is spousal support. Is that your understanding as well?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I want to just go over some basic information. In our state, mediators are not allowed to give legal advice, and certainly not financial advice either. So you're welcome to talk to an accountant or an attorney at any time if you want to stop the process, get that advice, and come back. What I am able to do is just give you some basic information about the kind of things that a judge would consider when determining a spousal support amount in the state that we're in. So, by the way, spousal support and alimony mean exactly the same thing, so I may use both terms back and forth. So basically, the first factor that we have to think about is the ability to pay. So for example, let's say Stephanie, your income was $5,000 a month, but Richard wanted you to pay him spousal support in the amount of $10,000 a month. Well, that wouldn't be possible because it's just more than you make. It's not within your ability to pay. The other factors that are commonly considered, a judge may consider things like the length of the marriage. It's harder to get alimony if you've been married for 3 months. So length of marriage. Also the behavior of the parties during the marriage. If there were claims of adultery that led to the divorce or other things like that, those often come up. Again, another reason to discuss it in mediation. Sometimes people don't want any dirty laundry they have to be brought out in court in a public setting. So this is a better place to discuss that. And then things like decisions made during the marriage that have a differential impact on the parties after the marriage. So for example, if one person quit their job to follow the other person's career and that put them at a disadvantage, then that might be an argument for more alimony. Or if one person quit school or quit work in order to stay home and raise kids, now they've got to take some time to get their career back up to speed. And that decision is something that both parties undertook and impacted both parties. So those are, some of the factors that a judge may consider, although they can consider anything. If one of you just inherited $1 million, that wouldn't be marital property in a divorce. That doesn't get shared, it's separate property. But a judge could consider the issue that one party has $1 million when awarding alimony. So lots of things can be considered. In our state, there's not a formula. There is one for child support, but there's not one for alimony. So basically in mediation, it's kind of let's make a deal. And that means how much and for how long. What's an amount that you can both agree to, that you think you can live with, that you feel is fair. Typically speaking, I want to say the person paying it feels like it's too much and the person receiving it feels like it's too little. Let's just put that out there from the beginning. That's a common perception and common feeling. That makes sense. And then the last part of alimony is it rehabilitative or is it permanent? Permanent alimony is not really common anymore, but when it does happen, it happens when someone's been married a long time and they're getting a divorce and they're closer to retirement age. So the idea that they're going to go back to school or go back to work and start a career is less likely. It also may depend upon the ability to pay of the parties. But for folks like you that are still working age and have some career ahead of you, if you wanted to agree to permanent alimony, you could, but it might be less common. That's something you can get some legal advice on. Okay, so that's just the information I want to share. I want to encourage you to go ahead before you reach an agreement today. If you choose to get some legal advice, you're welcome to. But let's see how far we can get. So I usually just ask for parties to start off saying what amount they're seeking, and why, and share that information and speak uninterrupted so we can get some proposals out there to discuss. I come to the case not knowing anything about your family situation or your financial abilities or those kind of things. So why don't you just take a few minutes to educate me on what I need to know and then share some proposals back and forth. Okay? Who would like to go first?
I think I'll go first.
Okay, Stephanie.
I'm looking for about $5,000 a month for
Okay.
the next 5 years. I quit school, I quit college in our senior year to take care of our first child, and I've been taking care of our kids ever since. They still have, football practice and tutoring and violin lessons after school, and I need to be there to make sure that they're getting their work done, they're staying out of trouble. I do plan to go back to school and finish my degree, and then I plan to teach, but that's going to take 2 years at least to go back to school. And then once I start teaching, I'll definitely be making less than Richard does. So I think that that's a fair amount to kind of get me to the point where I'm done with school and I'm able to be on my feet and supporting my half of our family.
Okay. So what I've heard you say is that you've got, did you say 2 kids? How many kids do you have?
2 kids.
Okay.
Yes.
And they're still at the age where they have after-school activities and...
Yes, they're 10 and 14.
Okay, 10 and 14.
Mm-hmm.
So they can't really be completely left on their own after school. And you intend to go back to school?
I do plan to go back to school, yes.
And it'll take you about 2 years to finish school and get
Yeah.
back in the workforce?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
And you plan to be a teacher?
I do.
Okay. And currently, are you working at all?
I'm not.
Okay.
Not outside of the home.
Okay. And thank you very much. And Richard, what are your thoughts?
Typical Stephanie. Did she say $5,000?
Yeah, I heard 5,000 for 5 years.
5,000 for 5 years. Well,
A month, yeah.
Unfortunately, that's probably not going to be. It's not a reality. She doesn't see reality in what it takes to care for a household.
Okay.
You know, based on what I'm making right now, $100,000 a year, and then what we've already agreed to of $1,300 per month for child support.
Okay.
Negotiated that already. After taxes, you know, I'll bring home roughly about $4,500 a month, and obviously $5,000 is more than, you know, the $4,500 I will be bringing home. So I don't know where I'm supposed to live if she's getting that kind of money.
Okay. So what I hear you saying is you're not against the idea of some spousal support for some period of time. Is that correct?
That's correct. I'm not
Okay.
against that for some period of time. That's
But that 5,000 a month for 5 years is beyond your ability to pay.
exactly.
Okay. And so we'll do some numbers in a minute. Do you have a number in mind, or do you want to work through that together?
Let's work through that together if we can.
Okay.
because I think
All right. And I've heard Stephanie say about 2 years to get back to work. So we have to talk about basically how much and for how long. We've already answered the question of will there be spousal support. Sounds like some amount of money is something that you're both willing to consider. The question is for how much and for how long. Yeah.
I mean, I asked Stephanie when our youngest went to school, this was the perfect time for you to either return to school or go to work. She chose not to. And one of the reasons we're getting divorced in the first place is because she chooses not to work. The kids are gone Monday through Friday, 8 to 3, 8 to 4. Plenty of time to get a job, plenty of time to go to work. We talked about it, but she chose not to do so. This is one of the reasons we're getting divorced in the first place.
Okay.
So I do expect to pay something, but I'm not going to sit and pay her to sit around for hours per day when the kids are in school.
Okay. I understand your concern is that there should be some fairness in the responsibility to support the family. I think I also heard that, Stephanie, you've been a stay-at-home mom.
I have, and what I did in staying home was for our entire family. It wasn't just for me. I wasn't sitting home watching television and, you know, eating fruit snacks all day. I took care of the house. I made sure meals were done. I took care of the kids when they came home. Laundry was done, house was cleaned, all of that was done. So I think it's a little unfair for you to make it seem like me being home was just, you know, a way for me to kick back and be lazy. It was to take care of our entire family, including you.
Okay, so I want to just say that alimony is the issue that people impasse on. What that means is they often in a divorce fail to reach agreement on alimony, and they put it before the judge, and I'll tell you why. I think there's two reasons. One, our state doesn't have a formula for how much it is. Child support, there's not as much to fight about because there's a formula. Alimony, there's no formula. So it does encourage people to roll the dice and put the issue before the judge. And maybe you'll get all of what you want, none of what you want, or somewhere in between. So the other reason why people get stuck on it is that a lot of the issues that came up during the marriage are kind of encapsulated in this issue of alimony. And it becomes an emotional stumbling block. So I want to, first of all, honor and respect your feelings and the history that brought you here today, and that this issue about whether or not Stephanie would return to work, when she would, or school, when she would do that, how she would do that, that's been a problem going forward. One of the things that the divorce will, I hope, allow you to do is to put that issue to rest, because however you manage your money in your household is going to be up to you, and however you manage your money in your household is going to be up to you. If for some reason you're able to pay your bills without going back to work or going back to school, that's on you, not on Richard, and vice versa. You know, the choices you make. So in the end, we'll leave today, if we reach an agreement, if you reach an agreement, you're going to leave today knowing this is the income I'm going to have in my household. And then understanding that income will then give you a feel for, do I need to work? How much do I need to work? How much do I need to earn to pay my bills? All that gives you that idea and the information you need to move forward. So let's just put this issue of when Stephanie returns to work, how that happens, let's a little bit put it on the back burner because to some extent, the budget might answer some of those questions for us. How long she has before she goes back to work. Some of that might depend on your financial situation going forward. So let's just see where the numbers take us. And I'm going to ask the two of you. I have my calculator here. I put a calculator out there, but I see you both have phones and probably have calculators on them. I'm going to ask so that we're all getting the numbers correctly. I'm no mathematician. I'm going to ask you to kind of feed me some numbers. What we want in the end, alimony is paid monthly. Now you can break it down into a biweekly amount if you're paid biweekly or however you want to do that. But when we write up the agreement, if you reach one, it's going to be an amount that's paid monthly. It'll say this is the amount due every month. So what I like to do, we'll do kind of a log of income and output. And Stephanie, I saw you spelled it Stefan.
That's right.
Okay. All right. So you said, Richard, you make $100,000 a year.
That's correct.
And how much is that a month?
That comes to about $8,333 a month, roughly.
Okay. So that's your monthly. We're going to mostly do this on a monthly basis. Currently, Stephanie, you don't have, you have child support,
Yes.
right? So how much is child support you mentioned?
That's $1,300.
Okay. So we're going to put minus $1,300 for Richard because that's coming out of your income, and that's a plus $1,300 for Stephanie because it's going over here as your income. And then Richard, this is how much your gross pay is. How much do you bring home in terms of what comes off just off taxes, not off your retirement savings or your gym membership that might be deleted from your paycheck, but just taxes?
Give or take about $2,500 or so.
Okay, so about $2,500
Yes.
for taxes. And this is, we'll write CS for child support. Okay. And then housing. You're not living in the same house anymore, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, so you already have or you will be finding a place
I have
of
to
your
find
own?
a place, that's correct.
Okay. And how much are you paying on that, either in rent or mortgage?
Well, I've searched the area because I want to stay close by where the kids are, so
Sure.
they have access to come. So I'm looking for, at least 3 bedrooms, so that when the kids come over,
Sure.
they'll have their own room. And in the area, roughly for a 3-bedroom, you're looking about $1,750 per
Okay.
month.
All right, so housing of about $1,750 a month. And Stephanie, are you staying in the home that you owned together when you were married?
Yes.
Okay, and how much is that house payment?
That's $1,300 a month. We've
Okay.
lived there for about 15 years, so it's about $1,300 a month.
Okay. And then for child support purposes, you said you already reached this agreement on child support, which means you've been through the process of calculating it using our state's rules. We don't have to apply this idea to alimony, but in our state, for child support purposes, when we put in mom's income and dad's income to create the family income upon which child support will be based. And the assumption in that child support worksheet is that if you have kids over the age of 4, you'll be working at least full-time minimum wage. We can still use that idea or we can not use that idea, but if we
should
did.
use that idea.
Okay, well, and I'm going to put a little question mark because I know there's going to be different thoughts about this, but full-time minimum wage in our state, because we have a pretty low minimum wage, it's not the national level, is $12.6150. But I'll put a question mark because you're not actually earning that right now.
Right.
You may end up going to work, you may work full-time, you may work less than full-time, you may make more, you may make less. But right now that's in flux. Okay, so let's first of all, let's take off from income minus taxes, minus child support, minus house payment. Is there any other?
Yes, I have a car payment also of
Okay.
$550 a month.
Okay. Now I understand that there's also food and there's credit card debt and there's, utilities and everything else. But let's just bare bones. can you help me, both of you, run these numbers, and we'll run them together and figure out what does that leave in a month?
About 2233 from me.
Is that what you got?
2233, yes.
Does that sound right?
On mine, I have about $500 a month for groceries for
Right.
feeding myself and the kids. Is that something you would want to?
We can. I
Factor
didn't put
into
groceries
that?
down
Okay.
for Dad,
Okay,
but
well then mine
but
is.
definitely that's certainly there's other. We know there's other expenses. Let's
Okay.
just do the
Right.
ones that are set for sure, and we understand that this is really not complete. I'm running my numbers twice because I want to make sure. I like to check every number twice to make sure that we all got the same. Okay, yep, I got the same number here. Do you have a car payment, Stephanie?
I don't. My car is paid off, but it's fairly old, and I will need a car in the next probably year or so.
Okay.
Get you where you need to go pick the kids up, so you should be fine for some time. And then there'll be time, of course. I'll be picking the kids up from school, or when I have an opportunity to.
So you're saying you might help out picking up the kids and things, but you're saying
But
you
that-
don't.
that
Let's focus less on kind of the parenting aspects and focus just for now on the financial aspects. Okay, so no car payment, $1,300 child support, $1,300 mortgage. We're going to come back to your numbers in a minute because we kind of don't know about your income yet.
Right.
But if you agree that this is what he's making monthly, the gross amount, and this is approximately what's taken out in taxes, we know this is a firm number on child support, okay? And then the apartment, this is how much the apartment is currently, and then the car. This is what's left. So I just want to revisit two things. Your first request was $5,000 a month for 5 years. And then your first proposal, you said you wanted to see how the numbers came out. You didn't have one yet. So let's move forward and ask. I have a question for each of you. First, could you come up with a number to propose? And secondly, do you want to revisit your proposal, which was $5,000 a month? Do you think that you are going to be able to have an award of $5,000 a month?
Well, it doesn't look like it. It's just that I was talking to one of my neighbors, and that's what she got. So
Okay.
I figured it was a good place to start.
Sure. Let me ask this question. Your neighbor's spouse, does he or she earn maybe more than Richard?
Well, he's a doctor, so I would
course.
assume that
Okay.
would be more.
All right, so it might be that a doctor is earning, I mean, I've done something like 15,000 of these cases, so I'm going to guess doctors I've seen, they might earn between $225,000 and $500,000 a year. So that might be a bit more than what Richard's earning. However, the good news is you said that it'd take you about 2 years to finish your degree and get back into the workforce. I don't know what field you're going into for teaching, but I'm guessing, do you have any idea what teachers make in our state?
I don't know.
Okay, so,
No, I don't.
Okay.
But I do have a counter, I guess.
Okay.
I mean, looking at those numbers, I probably could, $300
okay, so,
may be feasible.
so I'm just going to make some numbers down. We had a $5,000 offer initially, but we understand now that there might just not be enough money to go around. And now I'm hearing a counter offer of $300 a month, and I want to have you think about a couple of things. Again, we'll have to talk about how long, right? So regardless of how much is paid per month, how long will that happen? Will it be 5 years? Will it be something less than 5 years, somewhere in between? And then the ability to pay. My understanding, I'm sure, since you have these kids together, is that there is a need to make sure that the kids have their basic needs met.
Sure.
And is it your understanding as well that they'll be living with Stephanie more of the time?
Yes.
Okay.
$300 is not going to cover everything that we need.
If you got a job, I mean, that's the minimum wage. You're talented, you're smart, you can make more than minimum wage. So I understand.
Yeah, but even
what
if
you're
I-
saying, but
I just want to put down if, and this is just completely just to give us a number to start with, if you were working full-time minimum wage, this is how your numbers would look like. You're bringing in $300 from child support and paying out, $1,300 and paying out $1,300 on the mortgage. This is your net, basically what's left. So let's and I understand, again, there's expenses that aren't in here. One of the problems that the courts and parties struggle with at the time of the divorce is that there might actually be more bills in a household than there is income. That happens in a lot of the cases I see.
Sure.
The courts can't fix that. They can't award an amount, for example, maybe, if there's not enough to go around. They can't award enough to Stephanie to help her cover a deficit here without putting you in the hole. That's entirely possible. Doesn't mean they couldn't make an award that would then be hard to pay. Stranger things have been known to happen. But I do want to point out part of the problem we can't fix here today, which is each of you might walk away to say, gosh, I'm in the red each month. I'm going to have to borrow money. I'm going to have to work overtime. I'm going to have to cut back my expenses. So you might leave here today saying, knowing what my budget numbers are, I've got to do something. We can't fix that completely in mediation today, but let's just see where we can get on the alimony piece, okay?
Sure.
So I heard Stephanie say that the $300 a month is not going to be enough to pay for the expenses that the kids have in the house. And if we did, then that would be $1,561.50.
And if I'm going to school full-time and working full-time, I don't know if I can do both of them. That's just not going to be enough. And if I don't go back to school, I won't be able to make more once I get out. So I feel like something's got to give.
So sometimes people will deal with alimony, for example, in a case like yours. Let me see what you think about this, where there's more paid at the beginning and then it tapers down with the idea, for example, that first 2 years you're in school, you're going to need more than the 3 years you're not in school, because then you can work more, for example, or you'll be done with school and going back to work. I'm not saying it has to last 5 years. I'm not saying it has to last 6 months. Whatever the period of time it is also possible to stagger it so that it's not always the same amount over that period of time. What are some thoughts then? Do you think, what would you like to do, Richard?
I think it's admirable that she wants to return to school. Like I said, this conversation happened when our youngest went back to school 6 years ago. Mm-hmm. She'd be done by now.
Right.
So, but I'm sensitive to the fact that she wants to go back to school, and that's admirable. And it looks good for the kids.
Yeah.
I think some opportunity maybe she may have to possibly get a student loan.
Okay.
There are loans out there for people returning to school.
Okay.
That's one possibility. The second possibility may be, we have a 529B account for educational purposes. Mm-hmm. So that may be something she can tap into that as well.
So the 529B, that would be college savings in your children's name currently.
It is.
And I think what I'm hearing you saying is it could be used to pay for Stephanie's college costs.
Exactly. So the 529B is there. I'm an accountant, so she can use that money as long as there's 8 years before we're going to be after to use it for Claire, our daughter.
Okay.
So within those times, she can pay that money back in there.
Okay.
But as long as she uses the money for educational purposes only, not for, never mind.
Not for groceries or to buy a car?
Never mind. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Well, so I want to make sure, you said you're an accountant. I think I heard you say that.
That's correct.
Okay, great.
Tax accountant.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So you're saying that she can pull money out of the 529B, especially from your youngest child's college savings account, and use that to help pay for her own school expenses,
That's
which will
correct.
be helpful.
Yes.
That sounds like it's a possibility. And then your goal was to have her pay that back before the youngest child starts
off to
school.
college. Correct.
Okay. What are your thoughts about that proposal, Stephanie?
Well, that's great, but I don't know. The numbers just don't seem to make sense. If I'm going to school full time, and then working full time, there seems to be somewhat of a deficit still, and I feel like our standard of living would have to go down than what we're used to. And I don't know if that's fair to me or the kids. Even if you think I should have gone back to work, I've kind of kept our family well taken care of for a while, and I don't know if I feel like you're giving that any credit.
Well, I am. As I said before, there are ways to go back to school. There are student loans. There's the 529. There are ways to do that, and I would support you in that, and I assist you with the kids in that process. But that's something you have to think about using that. You can't pull anything more out of me how can I live?
Okay, so I want to, excuse me, I want to ask a couple of things. First, we can't go back and turn back the clock and change decisions that were made in the past. Yet they come up in divorce mediation all the time. Of course they do, right? But let's just acknowledge that whether or not Stephanie went back to school or stayed home as a stay-at-home mom, we can't change the fact that what's happened has happened. I appreciate you telling her that you are trying to be supportive of her going back to school now and going back to work when she can, when she's done with school, or maybe sooner. I'm not sure either of those options. And then one option that sounds like it's maybe working in terms of paying for school is to use that 529 account and then repay it perhaps later. That you're right, that doesn't change your day-to-day needs for money in the house, for income. But it does mean you're not paying for college out of that household income. So at least that's not added to your expenses there for now. So let's keep that in mind. All right, we're at the let's make a deal portion of the mediation. And what I mean by that is you've shared your concerns. We've kind of seen that it kind of is what it is, meaning there's not enough money to keep both of you at the level you've been at before. And you're gonna have at least a couple years where things are tight. And deficits might have to be made up through borrowing money or working over all these things we've discussed. It's going to be tight for a couple years. And I think I also heard time, not just money, but time, because you're going to be taking care of kids and going to school and maybe working, right? So we've got a deficit in time and money. So putting that unfortunate reality out there, making the best of a bad situation. The last proposal was, you said 5,000, you said 300. Can I get a counter proposal from you as to what would be, if 300 is not acceptable, what's your counter offer?
I don't know.
I will, maybe I'll look for a smaller place to stay.
Okay.
A studio, but makes it difficult for the kids to come stay with me, obviously.
Okay.
But I can up this to about $700 a month.
Okay. Okay. So I'm hearing you might be able to cut back on housing and then have a $700 a month amount for spousal support, but it makes it hard for you to have a place for the kids to stay. Is there any way the two of you can work together so that you can accommodate changes in your parenting schedule that might require, and maybe more time in the daytime if he's getting less overnights,
Right.
for example, which might give you time to study or go to work?
That would definitely work for, maybe during working time for me, if I'm working weekends or something like that. During the day, you could have the children, which would make it that they wouldn't need someplace necessarily to stay overnight. Or, you could have, other times during the day, you could pick them up from school and feed them dinner and then have them home afterwards. That's definitely something I would.
So we'll talk in a little
Sure.
bit about some parenting schedule implications, but what I'm hearing is you're willing to cut back on your housing budget in order to free up some more money for spousal support. So the current proposal then is $700, which brings it up to $1,961.50. And okay, Mr. Accountant, help me. If we do 700, Richard, off of 2233, we've got
Work on spreadsheets.
1233.
we've got
1233.
Let me grab my calculator real
Make
quick.
sure it's
Oh,
correct
Even
here.
if it's, I just feel like until I see it on the calculator, it's not
Agreed.
real.
Oh, okay. I'm
No,
looking at the wrong thing.
you're probably right.
No.
Okay,
I'm-
1533.
15.
That's what I thought.
I was looking at
There
the
you go.
1933.
Oh, I gotcha. Yeah, that's definitely confusing. Okay, this is why I like everybody to run the numbers, because I have caught myself, and it's also hard to think, write, and speak all at the same time. All right, so 1533. It's going to be tight for both parties, but what do you think about that? That's his most
Yeah,
recent
that's-
number. What do you
is
think
it
about that?
1633 or?
If this is your income, we don't know yet about your housing costs going down, so that might affect this bottom line. But based on the numbers we have, if this is your take-home pay and then you minus 700, this is what you're left with. But that's after you pay your housing, your car, your child support, your taxes, right? And then Stephanie, this is what you have after your housing is paid, but of course isn't taking into consideration
There are a lot of other
groceries and utilities, right? And so, but we acknowledge that it's either going to be tight or it's not enough. I don't know. It depends on your household bills. Same thing. But my question is, what are your thoughts? 700 is the offer on the table.
I feel like he can do a lot better. I know the numbers look like I'm
Yeah,
getting more, but
yeah,
I'm
you're
also
already making more.
I'm taking care of 3 people, and
That's
you're
all
one.
I'm
Okay.
contributing to that.
So what I'm hearing is Stephanie just said, yes, this is a higher amount than this, but there's 3 people in this household, 1 in this household. However, what I've also heard is that you're going to be doing some trading off where he might feed the kids dinner more often. He might have them more often on the weekends. So while they're not sleeping at his house, he may be taking on some of those grocery items and other things if you're sharing some parenting. I also want to mention that we haven't answered the question of how long. How much and how long? So we'll come back to the 700. It may be tied into the question of how long. What are some thoughts about the initial request was for 5 years, although I believe, Stephanie, you hope to go back to work as a teacher
Yes.
after 2 years. So the question is, would it still go for $700 for 5 years?
Well, I think that I would be willing to drop the length for maybe a little bit more money. So maybe just the help while I'm in school. So
Okay.
maybe during that 2-year period,
Okay.
if you could offer a little bit more for a shorter amount of time.
Maybe one of the things we may look at is, allowing me to claim the kids on our taxes for those 2 years, for 2 years while you're in school or looking for work. And we can do that. If I claim the kids on the taxes, I can probably stretch out another $100 or $800 for 2 years.
Okay, so I want to just summarize what I heard. He's suggesting that he pay a little bit more, $800 for 2 years, and during that time, you'll either not be working or you won't be working full-time because you'll be in school.
Right.
So you won't have a high income, probably.
Right.
And so he claims the kids on his taxes for 2 years. And then after you go back to work, after you go to work as a teacher, you finish school, go to work, you would then claim them on your taxes.
Right, and I'm
'Cause
already
they'll be
paying,
living with you.
already paying health insurance for the months as well. So
Right. And we know that from the child support work, probably that was decided earlier, you're paying the health care costs. Okay. So the offer on the table, just to summarize, and tell me if I've gotten this wrong, is $800 a month all this. A chalkboard would be easier, right? Okay. So we've got, your proposal is $800 a month for 2 years, and Richard claims the kids on his taxes for those 2 years.
I think as long as my income didn't get to the point where it would make more sense for me to pay taxes for
Okay.
them, I think that
you're a lower income. It's best. It's going to benefit us both if I claim the kids on taxes. It's not going to make much difference with your income if you're making $12.61, a little more than minimum wage. Not making.
But I think that
Not
that's
going to make much
something,
difference at all.
maybe not to you, but I think that that's something that we might be able to
you looking at
reassess
the numbers?
as I,
We're talking 2 years.
Well, let me ask, you just said if your income gets above a certain level,
Right.
you want to revisit it
yes,
in that 2-year period.
in that 2-year
So
period.
do you have any proposal about if your income got above X, then you would get to claim one or both kids? What's the number your income would need to be that you want to throw out there?
Let's say $25,000, that would be a threshold that would have us reassess at that point, what the cost benefit was for both of us.
So does that? I mean, my income's been the same for the last 10 years. Even with overtime, when I do overtime, it's still the same last 10 years. So my number's not going to change. What will change, though, if you want to revisit that, we can revisit it, but then that $800 could slide down as well.
Well, then I would be hoping to have the tax benefit be something that would make up for it. So
All right, so what I heard Richard
But
just
let
say.
me also
yeah,
say this. We only claim the kids on our taxes once a year, twice a year.
Right, and it
unless
comes
we
as a
change it.
chunk, you get a
Exactly.
refund, and then you could spread that out somehow, I understand.
Yes.
But I think what I heard Stephanie say is if she's making more than 25,000, she might be willing to revisit the alimony amount?
Yes.
Okay,
I'll do your taxes for you.
okay, he's an accountant. Okay, so we'll leave that one just for, well, you'll probably have to share income information with each
Right.
other, so that's something to consider. But what I've heard then, tell me if I've gotten it wrong, is the proposal is $800 a month for 2 years. Richard claims both the kids on his taxes. If at any time Stephanie makes above $25,000 in any calendar year, then she would get to claim one kid or both kids.
I guess we could take a look at
It's
that.
only for 2 years, remember?
Right.
Right.
Well,
Oh, so the issue of who claims the kids will be revisited as well as the alimony.
right.
So I didn't mention this before. In our state, alimony can be modifiable or non-modifiable. Non-modifiable means even if Richard won the lottery tomorrow, if you agreed to 800 and it's not modifiable, then that's what it is, okay? Or if you win the lottery tomorrow. Modifiable means if some big change happens to either person's income within this period of time you're talking about alimony, which is 2 years, you can come back and ask for it to be changed. So it sounds like what you're thinking about is modifiable alimony, and this issue of who claims the kids on their taxes is also something that you're going to agree to now. Richard gets to claim them, but within this 2-year period, if the trigger for modifying alimony and modifying the tax deduction would be if Stephanie earns more than $25,000 in a calendar year. Does that make sense?
Yes, but that works both ways. So
Okay, right,
I don't want to be back here in 6 months,
right,
for her asking for more money.
right.
So I'm
yeah.
more inclined to not a non-modifiable agreement.
Okay,
It's 2 years.
right.
I expect her. She's a smart young lady. I expect her to be on her feet within that time frame.
Okay. I hear what you're saying. You want to know what your numbers are going to be so you can make decisions going forward. And we're only talking about a 2-year period. That makes sense. I think if you put in a condition that it's modifiable, you could put in there upon condition X. And the condition would be Stephanie's income is more than $25,000 in any calendar year. Just to note, full-time minimum wage for a year is about how much you think? That's about 14,000
Correct.
something, 14,
Right.
15. So you'd have to make almost double minimum wage in order to, working full-time, in order to hit that cap. And I don't know what you think the likelihood of doing that in the next 2 years will be while you're in school. I don't know. So that's something to think about. I'm hearing a preference that there's some value in having stability in the numbers.
Yes.
But there's also this concern of fairness that if her income goes up, she might want to be able to claim the kids on her taxes. Have we thought about all the options to solve that dilemma? The modifiability is one. The other issue is there's 2 kids. Maybe you want to talk about, it's only 2 tax years, right?
Right.
Correct.
So,
So are you willing to make this non-modifiable for 2 years?
Well, if I asked for it to be modified by a judge, they would be able to do that and change things if it's modifiable, correct?
theoretically, it's true. I want to mention that if it's what we call contested, meaning she asks for a change and you say, no, I don't want it, it can take a while to get into court. It depends on how long that process gets dragged out.
So even if it's modifiable, it might take time to get in front of a
To get
judge
in
who's
front of a
going to
judge?
change anything?
Right. I can't tell you how long. That'd be a great question to ask a lawyer and get some legal advice. Again, if one side is fighting it and they're asking, if attorneys get involved, then you have to work around their schedules and their calendars and when they can get into court too. So, I can't tell you how long it would take. But let's go back to your underlying interests, which are to make sure you both have what you need to get by and the kids have what they need to get by. I think the challenge that we're trying to deal with is that you don't for sure know what the future brings in terms of your own income.
Right.
And the thing that brought this up was claiming the kids on their taxes. on your taxes.
Correct.
As long as you're not working at all and your only income is alimony and child support, I'm hearing, tell me if I'm wrong because I don't give tax advice, I'm hearing an agreement that it makes sense for Richard to claim him under that scenario.
Yes, it does.
Once you start working, it might make less sense. Do you want to talk about what decisions make sense if you start working and earning enough that the claiming them makes sense? Do you want to put in that you'll revisit that each year?
I just want the option to be able to look at it. You know, he's Mr. Big Time Tax Accountant and, you know, wants to say what should or should not happen, but, you know,
Right. You might
I'm
want
no
to get,
dummy. I want to look at things too.
I didn't call you a dummy.
I didn't say
I
you
think I
did.
called you smart earlier.
Okay. The problem is we have to figure out what the future holds. So do you want to put into an agreement, for example, it can be non-modifiable child support if the two of you want to agree to that. And the issue of who claims the kids on their taxes, right now you agree it makes sense for Richard to claim them, but that's for one tax year. Say for the one tax year we're about to start.
Just to correct what you just said, you said modifiable child support?
No, I'm sorry. Thank you
Okay,
so
wanna
much.
make sure.
Non-modifiable alimony. Thanks for catching that.
Because the child support can be modifiable.
Yeah, child support can be
So-
modified, generally speaking, every 2 years or anytime there's a big change in income.
Exactly,
Okay.
so,
So or costs for the kids. So I would think about maybe, do you want to have an agreement that says each tax year you'll discuss how to, what makes the most sense in terms of claiming the kids on your taxes, or how do you want to deal with that? We've only got 2 years of alimony we're talking about because you already agreed that once she goes back to work in a career job after school,
sure.
she can claim the kids.
Yes.
So we're talking about 2 tax years.
I think that it makes sense for it to be non-modifiable. If it's just 2 years,
Thank you.
Okay. Non-modifiable. And then, so for this upcoming tax year, Richard claims both kids.
yes.
And then for the following tax year, because it's only 2 years, the two of you will revisit it. And you can make an agreement to come back to mediation if you get stuck. If you want to, you're always welcome to come back to mediation and get some help walking through that. Or probably the two of you will be able to resolve that on your own.
I think
$200 an hour? Sure.
Hey, I'm here for you. I'm here for you. Okay. So Richard claims both kids in this upcoming tax year, and for the following year, the two of you will revisit that issue.
Yes.
Okay. So $800 a month, starting the first of next month, or when do you want this to start?
Well, I'm still looking for a place, but I think I'll be able to find a place by, start of next month, yes.
Okay. So do you get paid once a month or every 2 weeks or the first?
Monthly,
Okay. So do you want that to come out be paid on the first?
that's fine.
Okay. So $800 a month starting the first of next month and being paid monthly for 2 years. Richard claims both kids for this upcoming tax year. It is non-modifiable, and after this tax year, the two of you will revisit the issue of who claims the kids on their taxes. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right, look how far we've come. Great job. Okay, so the next thing we need to talk about is if you have any remaining property division issues. Ready for that? Okay. In order to get to how much and how long, the mediator used the board in this scenario, listed the husband's income minus child support and taxes, and the wife's income. It's not surprising that sometimes somebody asks for more alimony than can possibly be paid. The board forms a reality check, looking at what's possible. Additionally, the mediator helped the parties to create new boundaries that they will need to succeed in their post-divorce life. For example, when the husband repeatedly insisted that the wife go back to work, I tried to convey that each person will make these decisions about their careers and incomes separately going forward. However, they each have to live within whatever budget they have in their household, and that's no longer the other person's problem going forward. As in this case, the child support and alimony aren't enough to live off of, so it may be the case that the wife does go back to work, but that will be her decision. Any shortfall in her budget will be hers to deal with.